What's up, y'all? You're watching Brooklyn Shuffleboard, and you're about to watch the first ever national shuffleboard tournament held in New York. People traveled from around the United States and even as far as Norway for this one, and in the finals, it is going to be a Royal Palms Brooklyn versus Royal Palms Chicago matchup. We have Eric and Ben from Royal Palms Brooklyn going up against Rob and Kim from Royal Palms Chicago, and as you can see here, the winner of this thing gets a whopping $1,200, the most money ever awarded for a shuffleboard championship. Joining you for commentary are going to be Abby and Paul. They're going to give you a ton of tips to level up your shuffleboard game and walk you through everything going through the mind of these competitors. It is going to be a blast. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and enjoy the match. All right, and we are about to kick this thing off. Frame 1 of 16 is about to start. Eric's just finishing up his warm-up shots. And a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. Format of the match is a single 16-frame game. So the way this is going to work is that Rob and Kim from Royal Palms Chicago are going to do 8 frames on yellow. Eric and Ben are going to do 8 frames on black. Before the 9th frame, they're going to switch colors and then do 8 more warm-up shots each, and then play frames 9 through 16 on the new colors. Whoever's ahead after 16 wins it all and becomes the national shuffleboard champion and the recipient of the $1,200 check. Yeah, so this is going to be a really great match. As mentioned, Abby and Paul do my commentary, and I'm going to turn it over to them right now. Thanks again.
Awesome, thanks Jeff. We're excited to be here, and we're excited to be a part of talking to you all about the very exciting finals match at our very first ever national tournament.
Yeah, definitely exciting. It has been a long, busy 2 days, but we are finally here at the finals of this championship bracket. Chicago versus Brooklyn, the long rivalry that we've had here. The first Illinois shuffleboard national tournament that they had 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago now, actually resulted in a Brooklyn championship coming over there. And so now this is Chicago trying to do the same thing back to us and take that championship title from our first national tournament.
Yeah, I've been warning people.
You can hear the crowd here. They are excited.
They're really pumped. We've been warning people. I said Chicago's going to come in hot. I mean, we were really excited to see Brooklyn take that national championship in Chicago. And there is such healthy competition and rivalry between Brooklyn and Chicago, as you can probably hear behind our voices. We'll be excited to see either of these teams win, but I do imagine Chicago is going to hope to take the first Brooklyn National their way. Yeah,
they're definitely going to do that, or they're definitely hoping to do that, and I will say that Ben and Papa, who are playing black right now, are not going to make that easy. So right now we've got Kim from Chicago, who's playing yellow, and she started off with a St. Pete block and go ahead and does that again. And you got Ben here playing black for Brooklyn. He is a pretty straightforward shooter, straightforward strategy-wise. He's going to be clearing and kind of going for his hammers, generally speaking. He doesn't really play too risky of a game if he doesn't have to.
Definitely, and I think something about Ben, too, is you'll notice during the filming here that Ben takes a lot of time to think about his shots. He often gets really low to look at all the angles. He's an incredibly accurate player, and so you will definitely see that throughout today. Of course, Paul and I are both here from Brooklyn, so we know Ben and Papa as players a little bit more than we know Kim and Rob, but we're excited to see how they show up today. And so Kim is lining up for her last shot. She is off hammer here. Always interesting to see what players do here. Do they go for the block? Are they thinking high 10? Are they thinking high 8? She goes for that 10, but it hits the back line. And so now Ben here has an interesting situation where he could use it as a backstop and try to do something with that, or he might just score openly. It looks like he's lining up to potentially use it as a backstop. I wonder if he'll throw in some kitchen speed.
And you can see him lining up exactly the way that you were just talking about, taking that extra few seconds to kind of line up that shot. Ooh, he got caught by that line on the outside of the 8 there. And actually one thing that's interesting is the drift on this court, from my memory, is honestly that it kind of drifts to the outsides a bit. So the kind of the alleys tend to sort of drift outside, and the middle of the court actually kind of hooks back into the center line. And so he kind of caught that outside drift there, which made his hammer a little bit kind of hug the outside of the triangle there.
Yeah, I actually had a match on this court yesterday, and I definitely agree with you on the drift. I think specifically on the alley for us right now, it's camera left. It is a pretty serious drift out to the alley, and so it'll be interesting to see how they play that, how they see it, and kind of how they're seeing the drift.
Yeah, you saw Rob kind of hesitate on that clear there. I think he was sort of thinking, is that block good enough for Papa to get behind, or should I try to do something else, go on the board, whatever it might be? I'm curious. From my understanding of Rob, he's a very risky player, but he is also very successful in that risk. Takes a lot of kitchen shots and things of that sort, and I say that he's very successful in that risk because he ultimately has gone here to the finals, so clearly it's working for him. But he does stick that clear there, which is now giving Papa a chance to hide behind that and use it as a St. Pete block, essentially.
Yeah, and he's definitely lining up from the 4 spot, trying to get that widest angle to go across. It's looking good for a 7.
Yeah,
sneaks right past that 7-8 line and nails that 7.
Yeah, beautiful high 7 there. It's really nicely tucked behind that block. Rob could maybe see a little bit of it from the outside, but it's not going to be an easy clear. All right, just goes for the straight direct clear. This is interesting, though, because his clear rolled into a Tampa for Papa, so he could be risky if he wanted to and actually hide behind that Tampa with 2 scores, knowing that that 7's a high 7. Or he can just block up that 7, which kind of helps to block up the entirety of the board. And it looks like he's going on the risk-averse side of just blocking up the 7. I think he probably wishes that block was a little bit higher to help block up the cross-court shot for Rob, but we'll see what Rob's able to do here.
I was thinking the same thing about Papa's shots, either coming down the alley and scoring. Because it's a high 7, what would you have done in that moment?
Because this is just frame 2, I think that going for that block on the 7 is the right shot. You might as well try to just lock that in, and you kind of block up the board at the same time. So I like what Papa decided to do there. I think he would have just liked to have that block a little bit higher to kind of block up more of the board. It looks like he got that 8 there. Yeah, so the score is right now 8-7. So Chicago, playing yellow, is leading up by 1 point after 2 frames. And now, the interesting thing is you guys have probably watched Jeff's channel for a while now. The color order that we shoot here is yellow, black, black, yellow. So right now it is Ben from Brooklyn who's shooting first, and Kim playing yellow is basically it's her hammer frame here. And she clears that St. Pete block perfectly, pretty much. There's a little disc there, but you can't really hide anything behind that.
We sort of had some interesting 2 frames here, with the first frame going 0-0, but then the second frame, both sides scoring. So kind of an interesting start to the game based on like the hammer cadence. So black had the hammer in the first frame and did not get that score, and then yellow had the hammer in the next frame and they both scored.
Yeah,
so
I mean, I think it's kind of is a really important hide and block that kind of Papa did sort of to keep that 7 in after Ben unfortunately hit that line on his hammer in the first frame. So now Ben, I mean, if I'm Ben, I'm kind of thinking about how do I try to maybe steal this hammer back when I missed my hammer the first frame. How do I try to come up even against my opponent so that I'm not necessarily doing a disservice to my teammate on the other end? Unfortunately, that block he puts up kind of curls into a Tampa for Kim more than it is a block for Ben. And you can see Kim moves over to Ben's side of the court and kind of lines up to see where she can put this disc. And it looks pretty good. Ooh, just hits the back line of the 7. Oh, man, that was so close. She had a great line there. It just came down a little bit too deep.
It's interesting to see what Ben's going to do here. You can see he's really thinking about it. Obviously, that last shot didn't go how he planned, and so right now he's in kind of a tough spot knowing that she has the hammer. The Tampa's very helpful for Kim right now, but it's not really servicing Ben as well for a hide. He might be considering still coming down his own side and making her chase him.
I think if I was him, I would honestly go down my side, kind of thinking that if I get a high 8 or a block on that side, it helps to make her shot pretty difficult. It looks like he's just going to try to bump his forward, and he gets it, which is great. I love that shot. Not a lot of people like to go for the bumps because, if you're offline just a little bit, you're going to miss that shot. You're going to hit a line on the triangle, but Ben nails it, and Kim hits the block trying to clear the 8, which leaves Ben stealing Kim's hammer and going up another 8 points. So it's now 8 for yellow and 15 for black. And now Papa's got the hammer on frame 4, so he has a chance to expand the lead even further.
I think you make an interesting point about the bump shot. I always encourage newer players to start trying the bump shot maybe earlier in the game, especially with a 16-frame game, because once you're getting the feel for it, then when you need it a little bit later in the game, I think it's really helpful. I think if you wait to go for the bump shot until you absolutely need it, and it's like frame 12 or 13, the likelihood of you hitting it right and hitting it at the right angle is a little bit harder. So I really like you said, that Ben did that now. Now he's kind of got that speed. It also worked out really great for him, but it's kind of a nice thing to have in your back pocket for later.
Yeah, it definitely worked out for him there. Unfortunately, it looks like right now, so Rob playing yellow started off with a traditional St. Pete St. Pete block. It was a little bit wide, but Papa going for the clear actually ended up sticking and rolling inside slightly, making the block even a little bit better for Rob. So now this might be Rob's first height attempt here. He took this line during practice, but let's see if he can get back there. Ooh, hits the 7-8 line, I believe. Yeah, it was a pretty good line overall. He's pretty tucked in there. You can see maybe a little bit of it from the inside, but unfortunately that 7-8 line is sticky.
The good thing about a shot like that, people are often frustrated when they hit the line like that, but depending on what Papa does here, it's possible that Rob's able to use that later, and this is kind of what just unfolded here. So yeah, Papa went for the clear, got both of his discs off, but now Rob has an opportunity to potentially split his disc on the 7-8 line into 7 and 8 and get 15 points out of it. And so while he didn't hit the hide on that first shot, it's nice to have a usable disc left there, and so he lines up for it, takes that shot, and it looks like the 7 is going to be in, but the 8 is on the line just a little bit.
Yeah, the 8 is just kissing the outside line there, but at least it kind of helps to sort of block up the 7. So honestly, I don't hate that result. It is tricky sort of having a split when your opponent has the hammer. Oh, it looks like, okay, Papa he gets to the 7, but he rolls onto the center line, so he's not able to replace the disc. There is still that disc that Rob has on the 8 line that honestly here, we were talking about bumps last frame, this is a great opportunity to go for a bump. I think here you can potentially be bumping this into a 7 and your disc acts as a block, and that disc that Papa has on the board is such a deep 7, it's not worth trying to split that, and it sort of is a way to kind of steal the hammer back. Ooh, it looks like he maybe tries to snuggle it. He gets an 8, which is definitely tricky. This is not going to be an easy shot for Papa.
I really like that shot. I think like the snuggle and sort of scoring next to something, or just kind of thinking of like, how can I score where it makes it hard for him to clear, is a little bit underused. And so Papa goes for the shot here.
Yeah, it looks like Papa just joins him in the 8, so both 8s are actually in. That was a tough shot, but I think overall it's not a terrible result. They were already up 7 points going into that frame, so it's a push. They're holding that lead. They're still up 7 points after 4 frames.
Do you think you would have gone into that shot with more speed, or how would you have attacked that shot?
Honestly, I think I probably would have gone a little bit harder, but I'm also afraid of my disc that's back there at the 7 line, and I wouldn't want it to accidentally bump into there and kind of kitchen myself. So it's tricky. I don't really like to blast shots, so that's like not my MO.
Yeah, that's not really your style for sure. It's just an interesting thought to think, like, you know, players that do blast shots a little bit more, would both of those discs gone off, and would he have been able to, you know, really get that 8 there? So, but he's a bit more, I think, of like a softer, gentler player on those shots. We'll see if that stands true through the rest of the game. And so Kim is going here for a St. Pete. Everyone's style of St. Pete, I would say, is a little bit different. Some people like them a little higher, some people like them a little deeper. And so that one's a little bit deeper than many players would use it. But Ben comes in from the angle with a really solid clear.
Her St. Pete's are actually also a little bit deep in the first frame, and they're still deep here. And not to mention her hide attempt also went deep and hit the back of the 7, you know, kitchen line or whatever. So I kind of have a feeling that she's struggling with the speed on this court. This is always the kind of thing I'm kind of paying attention to when I'm watching my opponent's shots, seeing essentially how accurate their shot attempts might be. And it looks like, in my mind, she might be struggling a little bit, but she's a strong player. She's going to, you know, pick up the understanding of the court and probably adjust to the speed. Ooh, Ben goes at it with kitchen speed here, and he gets the kitchen. That was a aggressive shot from Ben, but I'm honestly not surprised. He loves a kitchen shot.
He sure does. First one of the game, you can hear the crowd cheering. Shuffleboard fans, they love a good kitchen shot. They love to see it. It's very exciting.
Especially here at the Palms, I think. We all love kitchens. It just makes for an exciting game. Kim here looks like going for the clear. Oh, but she sticks it. That's such a difficult clear to do. Rob jumping out onto the court trying to stop that disc from hitting anything, and fortunately it didn't touch anything. But now Ben's got his open hammer, so you can really, put the hurt in here if he can score this. He's already got 10 on the board with Kim's kitchen in the back.
I love that Ben slid his angle wide coming from that 4 spot. I think it's always interesting to really watch the angles that people come from, and he's really trying to use that angle, and he nails it perfectly into the 8. You can hear the Brooklyn cheers coming in. People are really excited about this game.
I wonder the rationale behind shooting from the outside there. I know you mentioned that you love, doing that. I'm curious if Ben kind of went for that, to learn something more about the court, to kind of understand when I'm hiding behind a St. Pete, what is it doing for me? But yeah, I think personally, I generally tend to shoot open hammers like that from the middle. But there are occasions when I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I love this line. Let me try it right now, or let me learn this line so I can feel better about my St. Pete hides.
Yeah, I like that wider angle because I like that it gives me a much longer line, and I feel that I'm a lot less likely to hit the line of the triangle because I'm coming sort of through the 10, the 8, and the 7. Unfortunately here, Rob went for the clear and stuck it, and so interestingly
Papa plays
enough,
conservatively, though. He doesn't use that block as a hide opportunity. He actually instead just adds a block, figuring that's a pretty wide block. Right now they are up 25 points. He doesn't feel the need to take any aggressive risk here. Instead, he's actually just blocking up the board some more and trying to hold on to this 25-point lead. We'll see if he continues to do that. I'd be interested to see if Rob continues to clear these extra blocks and just Papa do something different with his last disc.
Well, and I think he's probably thinking too, if he, shorts the hide and it ends up open to Rob, Rob's going to now be obviously leaning in for those kitchen opportunities. And so with the 25-point lead, not letting that be an option here, I think is a really smart play. I think a lot of people, they would say, if the hide is there, go for it, take it. But I like the way that he's thinking about it smart right now. Yeah. Rob goes in with a big clear and just wipes the board. The crowd is going crazy here.
I'm honestly a fan of hiding in that corner, and you see there Rob was able to actually just clear the entirety of the board, which is unfortunately a lost opportunity to me for Papa. He goes for the high 10 there, but comes up short, but honestly, it's not terrible. I always say that you kind of you're erring on the side of being short because you really don't want to be deep in the 10, giving that backstop opportunity. So near here just sort of creates a little bit of an obstacle and forces you to shoot from the outside of the, of the triangle, if you will. Shoot from the outside of the kitchen, shoot from 4 spot in order to get that hammer. And you see there Rob nails the 7. So now where they were down 25, they are now only down 18. So they're closing that gap slowly. There's still 2 frames left on this half. So maybe, if they can steal 1 hammer and get another score, they can kind of try to bring it back down to around 10 points going into the turn. But we'll see first if Kim's able to get her hammer in this frame. I imagine Ben right now with his 18-point lead and 2 frames left in this half, he's probably just playing a very conservative game, putting up blocks. And we'll see if Kim is going to do the traditional thing of just clearing and score her hammer, if she's going to play a little bit more aggressive. Looks like she's going for the clear, but it's kind of soft. It was almost like she went for the kitchen there, and so now as a result, she actually leaves a block there for Ben, and I think Ben's going to take it. He shot from the 4 with his hammer last frame, and that was sort of his learning opportunity to see how to hide behind a St. Pete. We'll see if it benefits him here, and if he's able to get past that drift that kind of hooks back into the center. Ooh, it looks like he hit the 7-8 line. Yeah, I think they're calling it no good, but if it's all right, yeah. So actually, one thing to also note, obviously this is a national tournament, as Jeff and Abby have already talked about. I actually have been the tournament director, kind of running the show for the tournament play. And so if there is a line call needed, I will have to drop the mic and go down to the court to make a little guest appearance and call whether a disc is in or not. So I am, remaining unbiased in this view. Kim going for the aggressive hide behind that skinny St. Pete, and unfortunately also hits the 7-8 line. So it looks like they're both struggling a little bit with the speed of these discs. But this now creates a little bit of a difficult scenario for Ben because it looks like Kim's disc could be split into 2 scores. And so Ben, I think, walks down to the court to see how much room there is, probably on her disc and also for his own disc, to see whether he can use his own disc and kind of make 2 scores out of it.
Yeah, I like to see players doing that. I think you really want to make sure you have a very clear picture of what is happening on the board. And I think it's really smart to walk down and check and really understand like what you can do here. And so Ben goes for the block because he came down and noticed that the yellow disc is splittable. And so he wants to take that opportunity away from her, which is a nice, smart move here.
It's also Kim's hammer here. So the block there sort of makes sense, generally speaking, from a strategy standpoint. Kim looks like she tries to get a 10 or sneak a 10 in there and clips that St. Pete block, that initial kind of block there, which kind of opens up things for Ben. I feel like if I'm him, I'm either going for that cross-court hide or even the Tampa hide. I'd say the cross-court hide is probably a little bit easier right now with where that block is, where those 2 blocks are, but we'll see. He's taking that, extra few seconds to sort of like weigh his options. He might just put up his own block.
He has been practicing that cross-court shot, so it's interesting to see here. He goes up for the lineup. He decides to go for the block, just making Kim's hammer really difficult here and knowing that they are up 18 points. And so, she could go for the bump on her disc that's up close to the lag line, but she may go for the bump on the 10, or she could come wide here. A lot of players, I think, get a little bit nervous when you have to shoot sort of along the line of the triangle as it goes out.
It is nerve-wracking, but here's the thing. If you go for that shot around and you happen to clip that block, you kind of bump it into a 10. So you have to think about, like, that downside risk there is, like, not really there, right? And so I like the shot that she went for of going for the 8 there. I think she could have hugged her block a little bit more and been okay with hitting it because you're likely tapping that into a 10. So now the scores remaining 13-31. Yellow still trailing 18 points, and now Black has the hammer in this final frame before the turn, and they switch colors. It'll be interesting to see if Papa can get his hammer here and kind of create that gap even further, or if Rob's able to do something.
I think what's really tough about that wide court shot is that you have to adjust your speed, and I think people often forget to adjust the speed because you're shooting a much longer angle. And so I feel like those shots are often short, and those shots are often short, and that's kind of what happened. And so here, Papa came in for that 10, and unfortunately,
he went really soft at that. I'm actually really shocked. It was almost like he went for the kitchen, but he was offline. The drift looked like it took him outside maybe, and he kind of put up a 7 on his own side, or he bumped Rob's disc into a 7 on his own side, and now Papa's in a little bit of a predicament on his hammer, which is unfortunate. We'll see if Papa's able to do anything here. It looks like he's just going for the clear, but actually puts his disc into the 7 on the other side. So now Rob has 14 points on both sides of the 7.
I think
that 18-point lead is suddenly feeling much smaller than it did 2 minutes ago.
Bumping your opponent into points, I think personally, is one of the most frustrating shots, where it's just you're trying to make something happen with your own team, but to be giving the other side points, I think is just something that really, will get in your head as a player. Because it's very frustrating, very defeating.
He's got to take a breather right now and really think about how he can mitigate the risk in this frame that he's sort of unfortunately created on his own accord by bumping both of those discs into 7 points.
And the good thing here is that he does have the hammer, so there is opportunity to recover here. He does have the final shot, the final say. I wonder if he's considering kitchening the disc that is on camera right in the 7.
I actually think he's considering. I think he's actually considering a hide right now. He's thinking, you know what? If I can't clear either disc that easily, let me just hide some points and kind of try to even out the scales a bit. Which I don't hate, but you have to be really confident in actually getting that score, because if you don't get the score, Rob's going to put up another block. Oh man, the line was good, the speed was just off, and it actually looked like it hooked back into the center a little bit at the end, so Rob can see that 8 perfectly. It's really not hidden. However, if Rob doesn't get enough on the line, he could hit it into his own 7 that's in the corner there. So you got to kind of be careful with this sort of replace shot here. It'll be interesting to see what he decides to do and how hard he goes at it.
This was a very interesting frame because I think in a lot of frames there's kind of a more clear shot, but I think on Papa's shot there were quite a few options that he could have gone for there, and a lot of it comes down to where have you been comfortable on the court, where is it drifty, where do you want to take that shot. And so Rob goes for the
gets
kitchen.
the kitchen. Sticks the 8, puts him in the kitchen, and this frame is unfortunately just a one mistake after another, but then Rob makes him pay. Oh, man. I don't even know. I think Papa here has probably got to be going for the replace. Hitting that 8. Oh, rolls. Okay, at least he happens to mitigate the risk a little bit. Overall, that ends up being 16 points in favor of yellow, which honestly isn't the worst damage control that Papa did a pretty decent job of kind of damage control there. So basically, Brooklyn playing black is leading by only 2 points now after the turn, the 8 frames. So I think we're basically going to take a little bit of a break. We'll let them do practice shots when they switch colors, and then we'll pick back up once they start the frame 9.
We'll see you after the break. Awesome. Welcome back, everybody. We took just a moment to regroup here, and both teams are back on the court, and they are working through their warm-up shots. And so after the first 8 frames, our team switched sides, and so now we have Chicago playing on black, and we have Brooklyn playing on yellow. And so in this format, we get 8 practice shots to judge the speed, the drift, anything that you want to practice. And so, Paul, I'd love to hear, when you're thinking about practice shots, what do you think is most important? What's your go-to move there?
Yeah, honestly, especially in this format here where we have 8 practice shots, I am a big fan of the setup where you basically kind of try to hide behind a St. Pete, hide behind a Tampa, and then maybe essentially replace an 8 on each side with kitchen speed. But primarily because of the fact that I have 8 shots. And then what I like to do with my second sort of 4 is exactly what's being set up here. It's 4 across the back, sort of like in the back of the 7s. And essentially the idea is to try to get a sense of the drift on each part of the court here. I usually vary 2 shots shooting from the middle, shooting from the 1, and 2 shots shooting from the 4 to sort of get a feel for the drift on each of them. And so what you're kind of doing here is you're sort of aiming at the disc, if you want to aim at the disc, and you're seeing how much of a drift over away from that disc it is from hitting it dead centered. And it's interesting that Rob actually skips a disc there. I wonder if he was going for that 7 or if he was actually just off in his line.
And so are you trying to kitchen these discs, or is your goal to just get them off the back? Or are you thinking clear speed? What's your thought here?
I'm fine with a snuggle like what just happened there, or a kitchen. I don't really want it to be any harder than that. And the main reason is because if it's too hard, then I'm not really learning the drift on the court. Like, I would rather come up short than push it out the back.
That makes sense. I'm always thinking how interesting it is to like have to toggle and vary your speed from like clear speed to now my hammer speed, now to kitchen speed. And I think that's what's really difficult when you're learning the game, and just really thinking about adjusting for each of those shots.
Yeah, so it looks like Kim here puts up a St. Pete with her first practice shot, which I don't hate when you have 8 to kind of spare. It's, you know, good to feel confident in that, but yeah, she practices the hide attempt, and she notices that she couldn't really get behind the St. Pete there, so she'll probably keep that in mind when she goes for it in the match. And so, yeah, now here she actually practices a Tampa. So it looks like she likes to practice those blocks and then a high when she's kind of shooting second here.
I think that's a really smart way to use your 4 discs. I think something to note here, too, is you know, typically in our like league play or different formats, people will just shoot their 4 discs and try their own different things. But in tournaments, you'll notice more that your partner across the court is sort of sometimes helping you set up shots. And so after you take that first shot, you can move the disc and set something up so that you can utilize those discs to set up shots that are going to be the most helpful for you too.
Yeah, and that's definitely common in the tournaments at this national level of your partner kind of setting up shots for you. However, both of these teams here seem to have mostly been clearing the board and just having an open board to take their practice shots on. All right, no, now actually we have Ben here asking for something specific. Let's see. Looks like he wants an 8. Maybe an 8 on both sides. Yeah, he wants an 8 on both sides like I was saying earlier.
It's interesting that he has them set up like that, one a little bit deeper, the other one right on the number 8.
I think that might just be Papa's interpretation of what Ben's asking for. They probably didn't discuss it ahead of time, but it ultimately is still the same shot. He went pretty hard at that, though, so I'm not sure. I wonder if the yellow discs are running faster, because Kim's shots were kind of coming up short on her first practice. We didn't have that recorded here, but knowing that Kim's shot came up short, she was playing yellow last, at the turn or before the turn, and so now she's moving over to black, and her, shots are coming up short. Whereas when she was shooting as yellow, her discs were going long, and so then Ben's first kitchen attempt, kind of there on that 8, went way out the back. So I wonder if maybe the yellow discs are running faster than the black.
Yeah, there is often a difference in the speed here. These are very fresh discs, which is great. This tournament is only the second time we're using our nice new discs. But to your point too, this is where it gets a little bit tricky with switching colors. And so, when we play in league play, you have 2 people play one color, 2 play the other. And so you're not always having to learn both discs, both sides, etc., different drift lines. But these warm-up shots here in the middle are particularly important because you've gotten used to your discs on the first 8 frames, and now you sort of have to change your mindset and try to use these 8 shots very strategically to get as used to these discs as you can, so that you can feel really good.
And that's exactly why you have to have 8 warm-up shots for both the beginning, before frame 1 and frame 9, because there really can be a really big variance in discs. So kind of only taking 4 warm-up shots, sometimes you don't really get to see all of that variance, and you end up using the first frame or 2 of play to kind of learn the disc some more, which can end up being, catastrophic depending on how bad or good a frame is.
Papa's trying to narrow in on his hide speed here. We commentated a little bit in the first half about Papa going a little bit light on quite a few of his shots, and so I feel like already he's shooting with a bit more force. You can sort of see it in his form. So he's kind of taking that and adjusting it. But it'll be interesting to see how those shots play out in this half of the game.
I'm not sure if how much of that might just be the yellow disc running faster on him, though. So, and even his 10 attempt goes long there. Either way, we are through the practice shots, and we are about to begin frame 1. And you can hear the crowd is already getting pumped up for these last 8 frames. It's been an exciting game so far. At first, it was starting to, become a little bit of a gap between Brooklyn and Chicago, but between Rob and Papa, they happened to really turn things around. Rob getting 16 points, essentially with 2 7s and a kitchen attempt, and then Papa kind of doing damage control by scoring an 8 on his hammer. So right now, the team playing yellow, which is Ben Brown and Eric Papa from Brooklyn, are up 2 points kind of to start frame 9. And so Kim actually whiffs that St. Pete or that Tampa block that Ben puts up, and now Ben's going to use that to try to hide behind, but there is a drift, and it looks like he shoots hard enough to kind of to counter that and gets into the 7. So that's a pretty well hidden 7 from what I can see here. Kim going kind of soft at it, isn't able to get around the block to hit it, but manages to at least remove the block, which is the main idea here. You want to make sure you hit either the block or the scoring disc. You don't want to miss to the other side and not hit anything. So now it's kind of on Ben to sort of put up another block that's good enough, but ooh, that's actually a little bit wide, and Kim might be able to see it from the outside.
She's checking the different angles here to see. She started checking from that wide angle to see, can she clip that coming from the 4 spot? She looks like she's feeling good about it, and so she's lining up, thinking that she can get in there and get that point out. She comes in with a pretty soft shot, and it lines, unfortunately. And so the unfortunate thing there is now she's sort of blocked that disc up more. But depending on what Ben does here, Kim could also use that disc to create a bump or a split opportunity. And so let's see where Ben goes. He came down to check the disc to really understand where to head, trying to think a little bit ahead here. And so he's lining up from the 1 spot. Like we mentioned before, he's getting low. He's checking all the angles.
Yeah, I think I'm going for a high 10 here personally. And even if it happens to go a little bit deep, it's okay. But looks like he gets the high 10. Or not the high 10, he gets the block kind of at the tip of the 10, so he airs on it being shorter. Kim, I don't think she could get a split on that. It might be possible, but it's really tough because of the drift on the alley there. If she is able to get it, it'd be amazing. So I'm really just kind of, looks like she's going for it. Oh. She happens to at least bump one of them into the 8. That's a very aggressive shot and well executed. She got so close to that block that Ben put up, which is exactly what she needed to do. Just didn't get the luck on her side to be able to stay in the 10 there.
Do you think you would have gone for that shot, or do you think you would have come down and scored on her own side of the board?
You know, I'm an aggressive player too, so I think I would have gone for the shot. It's kind of like one of those things where I'm like, you know, I might be able to get the 10 and the 8. I might be able to get 2 8s out of it. Like, there's a lot that could go in your favor. But, you know, after that shot, because Ben had that 7 hidden, they're still up by 1. And now Papa, or I should say that, you know, Yellow and has an extra hammer remaining. But Papa just sticks that clear on that same beat that Rob put up. So this gives Chicago a chance to kind of even the scales from that last frame. Let's see what he's able to do here. He's definitely going for the hide, it looks like, shooting from the outside. Might be a little soft. Yeah, it's a little soft, but it's at least a good 8. I wouldn't really call that a nasty hide, as Jeff would like to say, but it's about 20-30% hidden.
We're definitely going to bring back nasty hide here when we get one.
Oh,
Whoa.
and Papa returns the kitchen. That is some, you know, vengeance from frame 8 earlier. But, you know, there's still 4 more discs to go this frame, so anything can happen. But right now we've got a good 8 for Yellow and a kitchen for Black. That looks a little slow. Oh, he gets the kitchen too. We got 2 kitchens and an 8. Wow, you can hear the crowd right now. They are loving this.
We've got quite the kitchen game going on here. Papa comes in with his shot, heading
soft.
for the 8, but it's a bit soft.
This
and
is
so
a
we
repeat
still
of
have
frame 8.
We still have an 8. We have a 7 Black as well as the 2 kitchens. And so Rob's looking at all the angles here to see what is the best shot for him, because this is his final disc of this frame. And we know that Papa has the hammer. And right now Rob has -3 on the board and Papa has -10 on the board.
Yeah, I feel like right here Rob can honestly put up a block essentially at the tip of the 10, and that's going to block the split opportunity, and it's going to block Papa's line at the 7. Yeah, it looks like that's what he's going for. And that's pretty much as good as it could have been. Like, I don't think Papa could get a split out of that. He could maybe clear his kitchen if he wanted to, or he could score on the opposite side. I'd be curious to see. It looks like he's lining up for the kitchen clear, but that's really risky. He stays in the kitchen, almost knocks Black's kitchen out, which is exactly why it was risky. But ultimately, in the end there, Black steals Yellow's hammer and scores 7 on their hammer. So this now puts Black up 6 points going into frame 11. So they have even hammers left on each side, and we've got Chicago now playing Black up by 6 points.
And it's important to mention that they have the final hammer of the game, which we know that everyone does have an equal number of hammers, but people really like to have that control in the last frame, knowing that they have the final shot. And I think that's important to a lot of people because they feel that, you know, the game is still in their hands at the end there, whereas going into the final frame down without the hammer can really feel like a very big challenge. But you know, it'll be interesting to see what it comes down to as we get closer to the end. But it is just, you know, a way of thinking. We're always thinking, you know, you're up 6 and you have the final hammer, so that's on your side a little bit.
Yeah, I haven't been able to watch a lot of matches this tournament, obviously, since I've been kind of doing the tournament director role, but I've heard about a lot of matches that have kind of swung in the last 4 frames. So it'll be interesting to see whether this sort of is something similar or if this kind of gets out of hand and kind of just goes, you know, in one team's direction and they're able to hold a lead. That's a nice 10 there, kind of over the 8-8 sort of center line disc that could have been splittable. Ben right now is kind of weighing his options, thinking about how he could maybe try to clear that black disc, but also maybe use it to sort of get a score in the process. He's getting low and he's lining up. Looks like a pretty decent speed, but ultimately only the 8 remains in, the black 8 there.
That's a tough outcome from that shot because there were a lot of ways that could have worked in Ben's favor. Maybe the 10 stays in, maybe the 8 stays in, maybe
That's
the
exactly
black
what he
disc
was
gets
thinking,
cleared
is just
off,
like
right?
hoping for at least the 10 or the 8, but unfortunately he doesn't get either, and he just leaves the 8 in.
That is a really tough outcome, and so Kim comes in with a solid block here to make sure that he can't get her 8 out, but of course he's got other opportunities here on the board. He's got an 8 on the 7.
He's got the split on the outside, or on her side of the board, which it looks like that's what he's lining up for, and it definitely makes sense. But Kim still has one more disc to sort of rebuttal, and so it's all right. That's 3 good scores on the board. That's what he needed to do. And you just got to hope here that Kim doesn't make him pay and either clear both or kitchen one or who knows what. Honestly, a lot can happen still this frame. It looks like she's going to at least get the clear. Yeah, so she gets the clear. The 7 stays in. The 8 is out. Ben basically can score his hammer, essentially, is what this will come down to. If he can score an 8, he sort of matches her 8, and that at least gives him a 7 on his hammer. And these are going up 1 going into the 12th frame. But we'll see what he decides to do here.
What do you think he was coming down to check there? Like, what do you think he was mostly looking at coming down as he informs for this shot?
I mean, I've been looking at how much room is between those 2 black discs to see whether he can hit the 8.
That's what I'm thinking,
I think the
too.
risk of it hitting the 7 wasn't worth it for him, and he's just going for the score on the opposite side.
The unfortunate thing about being forced to like score on the side where you have your own 7 is you just definitely don't want to overshoot it.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's definitely not easy, but he, remains cool. He gets that 8 in his hammer, and he basically evens out the 8 that he kind of bumped her into earlier, and so he gets a 7 on his hammer, which is, he got the job done. Obviously, he would have loved to get 2 scores when they were down 6 points, but you can't necessarily expect to get that in your first frame kind of after going down.
Yeah.
So he remains cool-headed. They're right now up 1 point, but Rob's been doing, I should say, between Rob and Papa here, they've kind of been having some wild frames, and so this could still go either way. We'll see if Rob's able to get his hammer at a minimum. Maybe he's able to get more than 1 score, or maybe Papa's able to steal a hammer.
It's really exciting to have a finals match that is this close and to just see players making great shots on both sides. The crowd is just loving that and thriving for that. We want to see some really good competitive shuffleboard here to end our first national tournament. And we've just got a few frames left here to sort of see this all come to a close and crown our champion.
It's interesting that Rob was thinking so much about that shot. It's like he doesn't like that St. Pete, and instead he's like, I'm going to put up my own St. Pete, which honestly I think is a mistake. I think that's a crucial mistake when you, even though they are down 1 point, he has the hammer this frame. That was his chance to really put pedal to the metal and score a hammer. But now Papa, knowing exactly what Rob was after, he basically fills it in. He fills in that kind of line that Rob needed to get a hide behind that St. Pete. And so now Rob's left with 3 blocks on his hammer, which could become very dangerous. And I imagine that Papa's right now going to do the exact same thing, filling in again and kind of blocking on Rob's hammer and trying to basically make Rob's hammer as difficult as possible. Yeah, I mean, I think that's good enough. I'd imagine that Rob's not going to try to go for a hide between those 2 discs right now. Yeah, so now with this last shot, I think I'm actually going for the hide behind the St. Pete personally. He looks like Papa's lining up from the middle though, so it doesn't seem that that's what he's going for. Maybe he prefers a high 10, high 8 kind of shot, but
it's interesting because I'm surprised he didn't, slide out and look at that angle.
Yeah.
But he did just take this shot twice. He knows he's hitting it. He knows he's, going right where he's aiming. And so there's some comfortability there, and we'll see.
But you just leave a wide open side. So I feel like that's just a waste of a St. Pete block that you had there. And basically, Rob nails his hammer, scores the 8. They go back up 7 points now after 12 frames. So 4 frames left, and Black up by 7 points. Chicago in the lead. You can tell they're getting excited in the crowd right now. They're tasting that championship, taking the title from our first Brooklyn National Tournament. What a story where, basically 3 years ago, Brooklyn takes the title from, or I keep saying 3, it's definitely 2 years. Basically 2 years ago, Brooklyn takes the title from Chicago's first national, and now Chicago's kind of trying to do the exact same thing back. Kim just sticks that clear. Ben Brown, it looks like he's sort of abandoned the St. Pete, and he's going for the Tampas on his initial blocks there. And it seems like it's paying off because Kim sticks that clear, and now it gives Ben a chance to hide behind that. Let's see what he's able to do here. He's lining up from the outside, getting low the way he always does when he makes these tough shots. That looks like a good line, but it hits the 7-8. Oh man, that 7-8 line
is a shuffleboarder's worst nightmare, and I just feel like we've seen a lot of it today and yesterday throughout the tournament. There's been quite a bit of the 7-8 line already in this match. What a shot by Kim!
Bumps her, or clears her block, but essentially forward into the I don't think that's what she was intending to do, honestly.
Well, and the unfortunate thing here, of course, is that, you know, Ben does have a line on this.
Ben has a line on it.
And if Ben replaces it, Kim could potentially not have a line on it, because if he hits it a little bit on, you know, the inside
yeah, I think
and
he's
it rolls
gonna try
behind that block, this is actually an opportunity
exactly
for
what
Ben
I'm thinking.
to take.
Yeah, and he's going for that line, but goes too much inside and actually rolls onto her side of the court. So Kim can now see his disc in plain sight. I wonder if she's conservative enough to play aggressive here, or if she actually goes for... I don't hate, honestly, staying on the board here, because there is still that Tampa block that she has to worry about. And so if she scores a 7 here, it makes it that Ben has to deal with that. Unfortunately, she leaves him in. At least hers is still scoring. So it makes it tricky for him. But I think he has to get rid of her disc here. The other option, I guess, would be scoring an 8 kind of above all that mess and hoping that, you know, Kim's not able to deal with it appropriately. But in my mind, if I can see my opponent's disc, which she definitely can see her 7, I feel like I'm going for that. And naturally, it's probably going to roll in front of the 7 that's already scoring to kind of help block it up if it doesn't score as well.
Well, and I think what helps Ben here, too, is because he has to go around this blocker, he's not going to hit the disc on the inside and accidentally hit his own disc out. Because he's got to go around the blocker, he's likely going to hit it on the outside of the disc, and ideally he keeps both of his discs in.
But maybe he's afraid of going too wide. Yeah, so I think he's going for the 8 that I mentioned, but comes up short and actually leaves Kim a little bit of a line on his 7 if she shoots from the outside. But that's also where the alley drift is kind of strong. And so she might be lining it up, but whether she accounts for the drift will be kind of dependent on the line she takes and maybe how hard she shoots. So.
Well, and knowing that Kim is up 7 right now, it's interesting to think, do you just go for the points? Do you, you know, take that more aggressive shot? And if you feel like you have the line, go for the 7. You know, if they score, they can still go up a score here.
Yeah, it looks like she's actually not worrying about the 7, and she's just going to maybe go cross court. Gets the 8 rolling off of his disc. So she manages to essentially get 8 on her hammer. Big shot there.
And that was a tough board to play with there at the end. You know, ideally you want your board completely clear for your hammer, and that's what we try to do.
But it ultimately came down to Ben kind of putting that disc there, which she was able to use. And I can't help but think that if he had kind of placed his disc a little bit differently, that she wouldn't have had that shot. Yeah, so this is turning out to kind of swing the other way right now. And we've got Chicago up 15 points. But we do have Brooklyn right now playing yellow with the next 2 hammers. So they have a chance to at least try to match it or exceed. But we'll see what they're able to do here. It's a close match.
Something to keep in mind always, you know, alongside the score is how many hammers are left. And so although there's a 15-point difference, you know, like Paul said, yellow has 2 hammers versus black only having 1.
Yeah,
and so you want to keep that in mind, versus if you have even hammers and you're down 15, that is a little bit of a different perspective, and it's going to impact the shots that you're taking throughout the frame.
But ultimately, at a minimum right now, Papa's got to be thinking, I need to score my hammer. Like, desperately needs to score his hammer. He's given away too many scores, I think, on his hammer between, I think it was frame 8 and frame 10. That he really needs to kind of make something happen here. All right, he's playing conservatively. He's playing smart. He's essentially playing for his hammer, which I think is the right call. Essentially, if him and Ben both just can clear and score an 8 on their hammers, they'll at least be up 1 going into the final frame, and then you never know what happens.
It's tough going into that final frame, you know, up 1 when black has the hammer, knowing that all Rob will have to do is score. So obviously, you know, the Brooklyn team playing on yellow is thinking about how they can either double score in an opportunity so that they can go into the final frame up a little bit more and make it even harder for black in that final frame.
Yeah, I can't help but think about that last frame when Papa kind of had a wide, deep St. Pete that he could have hidden behind. And instead, he kind of puts up a Tampa, which doesn't really block Rob's hammer. And that was, to me, his chance to sort of, like, change the tempo of the game a little bit. But now he's essentially just going for an open hammer. Hopefully he can at least get a 7 or an 8 and keep this game real close. But, all right, it looks pretty good. And he gets the 8s. That's great. That is great. That's just enough to keep the pressure on. You can hear the crowd kind of, they're cheering. They want this close match. So now instead of a 15, where it was 15 points last frame, now they have even hammers left, and it's only 7 points. Obviously, it's still 7 points that you have to try to make up, and Ben now playing yellow, 15th frame. He's going to have to score his hammer here if he really wants to put the pressure on Rob to score the hammer in the final frame.
I think Jeff would have hit us with a nice hammy on that one. It looked like it was heading for that line, but Papa hit it solidly. And also, it kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier. He came from that super wide angle from that 4 spot, shooting all the way across the court.
Yeah, I think we're seeing more players do that, of shooting their hammers from the outside. I still haven't really jumped on that train, but we'll see if anything changes as I see more of these people playing national tournaments and getting to the top.
Ben goes on the board here.
Yeah, Ben's going on the board. I think he's thinking, I can't settle for just one score. And Kim whiffs. That is a painful whiff right now in the 15th frame of a match like this. But it still sort of leaves a lot of difficult decisions for Ben here, because if he blocks this up, it's kind of giving her a Tampa. So it looks like he's actually going on the board instead, which I don't hate, but it's not going to be. It's basically high risk, high reward right now here.
This is a shot that scares me a little bit here, going back behind that block like that, because if Kim went for the replace on the 7, that could end up behind the block.
Exactly.
And
I feel the same way.
I've seen that be a game changer in a lot of games. If I was Kim, I think I would have gone for that one alternatively.
So interesting that Ben is lining this up right now, and actually, I'm surprised he's not walking down to see how much room there is in front of that disc and see if there's enough room between that disc and the line. Instead, he's going kitchen at it. It's a little hard, and he also hugs the center line, and now this is exactly what you were talking about, where the only scoring disc is that 7, and it's kind of behind the St. Pete, that if Kim just sort of happens to get to the outside of that disc, which would be camera left for us, she'll be able to be having a 7, disc hidden behind her initial St. Pete that Ben ignored when he went on the board. Not to mention the fact that there is a backstop in the kitchen kind of waiting for her. A lot can happen here, but at the same time, there's also a disc that Ben can play with. But she gets the kitchen! She gets the kitchen, and the crowd is going wild. There's a 7 and a kitchen on the board that Ben has to deal with.
And I think that is why that shot was really scary when he took that shot on the other side of the court, leaving that there. That is really tough.
There's one disc left. You hear some people in the back maybe saying frame isn't over, and it definitely isn't. One disc, one shot. You never know what could happen here. Obviously, he's going to be trying to hit her 7 into the kitchen.
Let's go! Yeah!
He gets rid of the kitchen. He replaces the 7. It's probably not as much as he would have liked, but it's enough to at least tie the score and keep this game really interesting. So we are going into the final frame. This crowd is so loud, I have no idea if you can hear me, but we are going into the final frame, 63 to 63. It is a tie score. Rob from Chicago has the hammer, so he has the advantage this game in order to seal the deal. I'm curious if Papa decides to go on the board or put up blocks. It looks like he's going for the block, and maybe it goes long, or he was going for the board on the outside. I'm not sure. It's kind of right in the middle of what it could have been, but
that was a wild frame of shuffleboard.
That was definitely wild. Rob is playing safe. He's playing for his hammer. He's just clearing. He's not going to give Papa any chances. So Papa looks like now is going to be going on the board, and it looks like that's hitting the center line.
And an interesting perspective here, too, is Rob's looking at Papa with a little bit of a silly look, because he's just thinking about what to do here. But they're having some fun out here on the court.
I think Rob is struggling with his instinct of wanting to kitchen any disc that's on the board and then what the right shot is. And that's exactly what happens when you're between two shots. You got to make sure you focus on what shot you're taking before you wind up and shoot. And I think that's exactly why he just whiffed there.
Yeah, if you are waffling on the shot, I hear this a lot, is it's like you have to be confident, you have to buy into what you're doing, because I think that's often how we make those mistakes.
I know Papa wishes that 8 was in right now and not on the line, because then he just have to put up a Tampa and kind of put the pressure on Rob way higher. But he goes for the split and actually happens to miss it but stay on the center line. The fact that he got that close to the disc and didn't touch it, even at a minimum, is crazy.
The drift
I think
pulled it
Rob
around
goes for the hard
disc.
clear here. Ooh, there's definitely one in. It might be two. No, it's just one. Just the 1-8. So there's a black 8 that's in. But honestly, again, I'm walking down to that side of the court, and I'm seeing how much room there is, because this could be a high 8 if you just replace that. And you got to make sure you do not leave him in points. That's the biggest thing. You cannot leave him in points. You go for the kitchen with kitchen plus speed. But he looks like he left him in points. Oh, he at least put it on the back line, but it's a high 8, just like I mentioned. So there's enough room for that high 8. And this really, honestly, the fact that he didn't kitchen it is in a way kind of good, because now it sort of creates work for Rob to have to clear that without hitting it into the 7.
And so we're about to watch the final shot
This is the
of
final
our
shot.
final game of our first ever national tournament. And right
I'm
now,
so glad I get to watch this. Okay, Rob sticks the line. And so they are going to go 2 more frames.
more shuffleboard.
They're going to go 2 more frames. Papa doing a walk right now. He is so pumped. Oh my God. Okay, so there are 2 more frames, and the way this works is they are going to be switching colors back to their original colors. And they're going to go 2 more frames. Yellow shooting first, and then black. If the score is still tied after that, they will switch colors again and do 2 more frames.
I think we called this back around like frame 10, just talking about how exciting it is to have such a close game. And so for everyone here watching from 8 states and 2 countries here in the building, from everyone watching this, footage later, it is really exciting to get extra frames of shuffleboard. The place is going crazy in here. The vibes are really good. And we get a couple more frames here to see how this plays out in our Brooklyn v. Chicago finals match.
And honestly, you have to give kudos to Papa there. The score was tied. He was able to steal that hammer, that frame. He played it right. It could have gone who knows which way with that disc that was on the board after that whiff from Rob, but obviously Papa had some rough frames this game to kind of let them back in, but he managed to at least keep this, score tied, go 2 extra frames, give themselves a chance to kind of take the victory here, which is good on him. It's not easy for most players to be able to stay calm and collected to do that. And that actually might be the first mistake I've seen from Ben.
I was going to say the same thing.
Whiffing that St. Pete is not a good thing.
Well,
that is.
Like we were saying earlier with the color switch, right? Like they just had to switch back to their original colors. So now you were playing the other discs, you're playing the other drift. That is when it's common to make those mistakes. I think what's so hard about it now is there's only 2 frames left. You don't have 8 frames to get there and recover. And so those mistakes are really frustrating at this point, but Ben is such a solid player. I am excited to see what moves he makes to get out of this.
You saw him walk down to the other end of the court there. I think he's looking to see if there's an angle to clear both of those discs. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
I think the concern with that shot is that then he leaves his disc there.
Honestly, that is as good as that could have gone.
Yes.
That is impressive. I can't even imagine seeing that. I'm so curious if he actually did that on purpose or if it's just sort of a little bit of luck. But Kim puts up a block, which honestly kind of becomes 50-50, where Ben can hide behind that, use it as a Tampa, but it does still leave a chance for Kim to bump that into a 10. So it is kind of dangerous at the same time. Granted, I do think that Ben scoring would put the pressure on Kim to have to deal with that.
He's really thinking through the options here, trying to think one step ahead. Like Paul said, there are a lot of things that could happen here, and we know the pressure's really high right now. The nerves are probably really high as well with these 2 extra frames.
Ben is definitely thinking long and hard about this, and I am fully in support of that. I think there's a lot that can happen here, and he knows it. He knows that 10 can be bumped, but he also knows that there's a disc that can hide in the alley right now. He does have to make sure he shoots close enough to the center line to avoid that drift. And so let's see if he lines this up. This is kind of the line that he just whiffed on earlier. Oh man, that's coming in hot, but it's an 8. I wouldn't call it a hidden 8, but it's an 8. Kim could, I want to say she could see all of it, but if it's not all of it, it's a decent amount of it.
Definitely most.
Yeah. And so you can see her lining up for that 8. She's not going to worry about any kind of a bump when Ben's got a hidden or got a score that she can see. Although she hits the block that she put up, and now this gives Ben a chance to score 2. That's a painful painful shot there. When there's just 2 frames left, the pressure is really high. Even for Ben right now, to try to score again, and the pressure is high.
And here's that shot that he's been taking ever since we thought he took it as sort of a practice shot earlier, coming from that 4 spot, coming across to make sure he doesn't risk bumping one of his out. It's looking
Looks
good.
like a
and
good
it's
7. That was 15 points now. Final frame. But you know what? We all know that Rob's got a kitchen game in him. We've seen way bigger swings, so this game is far from over right
Absolutely.
now.
And so the score right now we're looking at, we have the team that was just playing on yellow is 63, or the team that is on yellow now is 63. And our team here from Brooklyn, Ben and Papa, is 78. 15-point swing. Black is up, and yellow is looking here to see what he needs to do with this block.
Yeah, and I think Rob's, so he's ignoring that block right now, and he's going on the board. He knows that he needs to be able to get 2 scores, and I think he's thinking clearly, that's exactly what he needs to do. He needs to make Papa chase him on the board, because he needs a chance for Papa to either whiff or stick, just like that, and give Rob a chance to do what he does best, and that's kitchen his opponents.
And if you went for the clear, the thing there too is if you mess up the clear and leave your disc there, giving Papa an opportunity to hide, letting them get another score at this point is a really bad place to be in. So I agree with you. I think he played that really smart.
Yeah, this still puts the pressure on Rob, obviously, because he has to either make this kitchen or, honestly speaking, leave it short. Like, you cannot risk pushing this disc out the back, in my opinion.
It's pretty good.
And he gets the kitchen. He gets the kitchen. He doesn't get the 8 as well, but it at least acts as a block on the kitchen. And this is now putting the pressure on Papa, where there's a, Rob's got the hammer here. You got to remember, yellow's got the hammer. He goes for the roll and almost gets it. That was a beautiful shot. I actually think that if he had just taken another 2-3 seconds to think about that line, he might have been able to get it. But we all have different approaches to how we take shots. I think Rob's got a decision to make here, whether he blocks up the kitchen. Does he go on the board again? You can kind of score near that black disc that's kind of in the 8 right now, and that sort of would become a really tricky thing. Ooh, is that in? It looks like I think they're calling it out, but.
We got an immediate no from the other side, but Papa's going to get down to check it. I love that. I think it never hurts to go see the disc, and also now he can really see how much of it's touching the line. What can he do with it? Can he roll off of it? Is
but
he gonna?
If that's not in, then Papa can just basically go for that cross-court hide/bump on the disc that's in play and put the pressure on Rob to somehow, hit, score. Like, he's got to do a lot then. So I feel like there's a lot that can happen here. I don't know.
And going into this frame, we know that they were up 15 points, but we want to keep in mind the kitchen that's on the board. And so right now they're really up 5. Knowing that Rob has the final shot of the game is a really tough place to be in because then Rob just needs to score. And so
yeah,
Papa's
and that's
gotta
an
do
easy tap
something
right
here.
now for Rob. So, like,
Absolutely.
if Papa doesn't score and he leaves that disc available to Rob, I think Rob will be able to tap that into 8 pretty easily. So you can't really just go put up a block. I think you have to either clear. You essentially have to bump that disc into the kitchen in order to clear the kitchen or kitchen itself, which is kind of a low percentage shot. Or you just got to try to push your own disc that you went for that roll on earlier, try to push that forward into an 8 and kind of put the pressure on Rob. But
There's
the
a lot of
combo clear would
options
obviously
here.
be the kind of nail in the coffin. It's a very low percentage shot.
Papa's really thinking about this shot. He's really weighing all the options, but he's lining up.
Yeah, I'm curious if he's going to. I think he might be going for the combo. We'll see.
Lining up for the shot, really taking his time. A lot of people stopped chatting during that time.
Goes for the 10. Kind of puts up a Tampa. This leaves the hammer to win on Rob's side here. If Rob can nail this hammer, which I think he can. Although I don't recall,
shot,
it's a high pressure shot. He just goes for it. He doesn't even take a minute. And he gets a 7. He gets the hammer. And
wow.
Chicago taking the national title in Brooklyn. What
Wow.
a game. What a match. What a tournament. The crowd is going wild.
A major congratulations to Rob and Kim from Chicago, and also to Ben and Papa for taking second place. This was an incredible last game of our very first ever tournament. We hope you can hear us, but it is so hype in here right now. The love in this community and support for all four of them is so beautiful to see.
Absolutely. Honestly, I'm so excited for Chicago and obviously for Rob and Kim, who are amazing. They played great. They played really great this match. They didn't give up when they were down. They kept fighting at it. They kept playing. They were playing smart. They were playing with strategy, and it paid off. Right now, Kim is waving the Chicago flag.
There's a lot of pride in here right now, a lot of pride.
This is amazing. All right, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys for tuning in, watching. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, all that.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. We hope you enjoyed the game. Keep watching and learning more about shuffleboard, and we'll talk to you next time.